this is probably one of the biggest takeaway I can give today is people not looking for a unicorn who know everything and understand everything, right? What we are looking for is someone have a solid foundation, someone have a good attitude to learn and collaborate, which that's most candidates don't realize during the interview. Many would really focus on get the answer right, get the question right, but that's really just the step one. You can frankly tell the people during the interview, like, oh, I don't know this question. You don't make excuse like, oh, I did this before, but I forgot. I mean, nobody gonna buy that, But you could frankly tell him like, this is not what I'm doing daily. Oh, I don't know exact answer of this question.
Hey guys, welcome back. Everyone is constantly asking me about AI jobs, machine learning jobs, and data science jobs. So I thought, why not bring on one of the top AI, data science, and machine learning managers in the area? We have Chou today. He has that role at Lowe's currently. He's also worked at Verizon, Royal Caribbean, as well as some other companies. That's all he does, is he hires people in the AI, data science, and machine learning space. So Jack, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. I'll share what I have.
Awesome. So yeah, listen, we know that these type of jobs, as far as individual contributor jobs, pretty much pay among the highest comp ranges in tech. So let's talk about if someone was going to start out their career and they wanted to get to maybe your team as an AI engineer. Let's talk about how they would do that. And then eventually we'll talk about what type of money they'd be making. So how would they start?
I would say it really starting from where you want to get into, right? Because many people have this idea, hey, I want to be a data scientist. I want to be a machine learning engineer, or now the fancy word of AI engineer. But what is really the difference, right? So I can quickly touch on that. Mm-hmm. First of all, in different companies, it actually means different things. So you need to be very familiar with where you are getting into, right? So for example, data scientists, in some company, it really means end-to-end. Like you're going to be the unicorn, you'll be writing SQL, be writing Python, and do the end-to-end development and deployment. But some company, you are really more focused on statistics, like A/B testing, etc. And in some company, machine learning engineer is really more like a data engineer job. Like you would be more doing like pipelining and especially around the data part. But in some company, that actually means you're very heavy on algorithm, on the modeling side, right? Mm-hmm. And if you think about data scientists or machine learning engineer, those are relatively new jobs, like probably in the past 5 to 10 years. Mm-hmm. So it's really evolving in different companies. So we can talk about in a certain type of company, what does it mean, right? For what kind of roles?
Yeah. So you've been a machine learning engineer since 2014, I saw?
I've been in the industry for about 10 years, yeah.
Okay.
So I actually carry different title, like software engineer, data scientist, machine learning engineer, etc. But my role actually, so I've seen kind of everything.
Yeah.
Also in my team, somehow, we also have different roles. So I would say, overall, especially for some tech company or if a well set up company, normally data scientists, I would say, would be more focused on analytics, right? In at least in a good amount of tech companies, right? They really focus on writing SQL, doing analytics, but it's really not that easy because if you think about when you manage a large amount of data, things very soon get complicated. Like if you need to test a certain feature, right? If it's working or not. Right? Mm-hmm. Should we, for example, look at the app? Should we even have this button or not? Even for a data science feature, should we change this algorithm or not? Right? And if you're running 100 experiments at the same time across billions, millions of people, like immediately it could get very complicated, mm-hmm. right? And also when you're across cloud, on-prem, different kind of tools and tech stacks, right? So immediately the skill set keeps just going up. So nobody knows everything, but you need to know like where you want to get into, like what you have and where you want to get to, right?
Yeah.
And machine learning engineer nowadays is really heavy on, let's say, modeling development, like algorithm modeling. Although in some companies, it's really focused on production and deployment. Mm. But I think that's kind of part of the work. So those skill sets probably for some company is what you want to prepare your interview for, what you want to develop your skill set for, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I know you mentioned SQL. Python is a must for all three.
Yeah, that's kind
What
of
else?
yeah. So I would say like interview wise, it could be different, right? Different company probably have different kind of interviews, right? So some probably more lead code, some probably not, right? Like my team, we prefer to have more like hands-on type of coding, like what you would be actually writing. So we would even ask candidate like, oh, write a function, write a loop, or using pandas, or using some Python package, or how do you write a forecaster, for example, right? Or even like later on during the deployment, like we would ask, because you would be using different kind of tools, we would also ask a little bit that. But some companies probably they really just Python coding, or they are like SQL queries, right? So before you step into an interview to really ask what kind of question would be asked, what kind of problem would be tested, this is gonna be really helpful. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, so you're hiring a lot remote. You said India, obviously here, in the States, but remote. I mean, how do your interviews run? Is it done through Microsoft Teams and they're typing? You said, "Hey, write a function about this." They're doing that type of thing into the chat box, or how does it work?
Okay, yeah, I can talk about the interview setting. So first of all, generically, I would say different companies very different. So you have to be really clear on what kind of question will be asked, right? So I can first talk about my team and then come into more general. So my team, we are normally like 3 rounds. The first round, we check if you make sense or not. So there'll be some textbook type of questions be asked just to say, personally, I don't like those kind of questions because everybody can ChatGPT 3 seconds to get the answer.
Yeah.
But
have you caught someone cheating during the interview?
yes.
Okay.
But that happens.
How often does it happen?
Well, I would say, first of all, it's very hard to really tell if a person is cheating or not. But that's not the goal. I think for people experienced, like some of the senior data scientists from my team or myself, we really can tell easily by asking a few follow-up questions, right? Because like, okay, so you can use ChatGPT, write the code on the side when we're doing coding. For example, it's live coding. We'll use CoderPad or whatever kind of tool. That's kind of like live coding. However, we would ask many follow-up questions like, hey, how just do a dry run of the code. Like you're not running, but you're just talking about it every step. What is intermediate result? Why you write it in this way? And also, there are going to be many other type of questions. For example, when you processing 100 million row of data, you're going to write something different than just a small data set, right? Or if something is like over 1 billion, like what would be differently? You write the model, you write the data set. Or we would asking, for example, if this happens in a model, like what you would do, right? Or even the code, we would just build upon on it. Like when, okay, we ask you write a loop, write a function, like to do some calculation, but what's next,
Or is it like, how did you get to this? When it just looks too perfect, right?
I won't worry about too perfect, because if you think about the time is actually very tight in a coding interview. So I would say even you have ChatGPT or anything on the side, you just can tell if candidate apparently they have a gap in between. Oh, they're just not talking for quite some time.
Yeah.
Or suddenly they become so fast on something and suddenly they're very slow. Like they don't even know some fundamental basics, but they tend to give like very complex answers. Or I think it's very difficult to cheat in front of someone who really know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So this is actually the reality. That's why I personally very much encourage the candidate to be honest. If especially, I mean, during either coding or non-coding, this is probably one of the biggest takeaway I can give today is people not looking for a unicorn who know everything and understand everything, right? What we are looking for is someone have a solid foundation, someone have a good attitude to learn and collaborate, which that's most candidates don't realize during the interview. Many would really focus on get the answer right, get the question right, but that really just the step one. You can frankly tell the people during the interview, like, oh, I don't know this question, right? You don't make excuse like, oh, I did this before, but I forgot. I mean, nobody gonna buy that, But you could frankly tell him like, this is not what I'm doing daily. Oh, I don't know exact answer of this question, You can either choose to move on, or you can talk something around it, or you can ask the interviewer give you another question, like, oh, can we talk about some other questions might also be related, or have this experience will be related to this job, right? So my top 2 tip. One is you definitely need to show your integrity through an interview, because if I cannot even build a trust with you through the interview, well, I cannot bring this person to my team, right?
Right.
Second, I would also say do a little bit of preparation. You would be amazed of how many people we actually give them the interview opportunity, but they walk in without any idea of what the company do, what the job description does. Even we clearly say, for example, this role we're gonna do focus on forecasting, and it's a very senior role. People would walk in the interview and just say, hey, I don't know anything about forecasting.
Right.
And then, I'm like, okay, so while you're here, I mean, what question should I ask you or not, right? But I would say over 50% of the candidates walk in the interview like this. So it's actually a very, very common thing.
Just have no idea. just show up totally cold, huh?
Yeah, right. Surprisingly, right? That's why I'm thinking, like, I know, like, nowadays people tend to apply for so many jobs. I mean, it's a tough market. So people tend to apply for so many jobs and just try their luck.
And it just pops up on their calendar like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Starts in 5 minutes. Great. All right.
Yeah. And try their luck. But my point is, like, get one interview is step one, right? But then it's like how to crack the next interview, after next interview, until you get the offer, etc., right? So that's really we need to focus on for each step. Yeah, and sometimes you really don't need to do that much preparation. Probably, I mean, you cannot pretend you have 5 years of related, relevant job experience just by prepare for 10 minutes before the interview, right?
Right.
But you can do some certain kind of familiarity with the content. Like, okay, if you know they are what kind of business, what kind of industry, what would be their typical challenges, right? And then what they write in the job description. If you could get some certain idea from the recruiter, that would be great, right? What kind of question will be asked, what kind of challenge the team is doing. And then you just need to prepare probably like even 10 to 30 minutes beforehand. Just go through like, oh, what kind of common challenges, common like modeling or whatsoever use case could be, That would be super helpful, because through a short interview, it's actually very difficult for example, for me to figure out how good this person is, right? So it's only a limited question I can ask and only a limited of feedback I can collect. Yeah.
So during these quick 30-minute first rounds, what is your goal? Your goal is just to, make sure that they're legitimate, right?
Yeah, I think every hiring manager would saying very different things. But for me, I mostly look at 3 things, right? First of all, most is actually communication. This is probably, first of all, this is like a very blurred concept, right? Like, what does it mean? Like, someone have good communication or not, right? But there are actually some fundamentals. For example, if this person can understand the content, sometimes you would feel like it's very hard to communicate with some candidate. Like, we're just talking really different things, like, okay, it's just, they just don't get the idea, right? Some candidate, you can tell that, they ask follow-up questions. So like they are curious, they are interested, right? Which is important, because showing that at work, they're willing to dig out themselves, to have some ownership, right? So the number one thing is really communication, like how they able to understand the question. For example, if they don't understand, they should say, hey, I don't understand, can you repeat it, right? Or
sometimes they'll just ramble about something totally different.
Yeah, right? Like try to pretend. Or sometimes even just, for example, I said something blah, blah, very long. And then the candidate could say, oh, just confirm with you, this is what you mentioned, this is what we want. So there are many formulas of how we break down those, right? There are many things online, like how do you break down a question, right? How do you answer interview questions? So I'm not going to repeat that. But it's just like through those fundamental communication skills, you are showing a problem-solving skills. Like if you know how to identify a problem, to really break down step by step the problem, and then to navigate a solution around it, right? And then confirm, because communication is both way, right? You confirm what you hear and you convey what you try to say, and then look for the feedback, right? Also, if the candidate would quickly shift the conversation during the interview. For example, if the candidate already saying something completely off, I probably already like, try to give them some certain idea. It's very important to capture that. And then you can just stop and say, oh, am I talking something makes sense?
Yeah.
Or is this what you mean? Some candidates are just trying to give whatever they have, like pulling it on the table.
Yeah.
That's not right.
Just hoping.
Yeah, hoping something working out. No, don't do that, right? You really need to communicate, need to ask. It's a two-way interview, right?
Yeah. What are some good follow-up questions you have gotten that you said, oh, that's good,
You mean
just general?
Yeah, general. I can give some framework. What are good follow-up questions? Number one, you can always ask about the team, the product, like what kind of problem you will be solving, what team you'll be working, what is the team culture, what kind of challenges we have. Remember one thing, people love to talk about themselves. You can just ask like what kind of challenge you have and how do you tackle it. People are gonna start to blah blah blah, and then they're gonna feel like, oh my god, this candidate is so good, because okay, everyone like to talk about themselves. The second most common question you can ask is, what's gonna be my role for the next 3 to 6 months or 6 to 12 months? You can break this down like, hey, what would be my onboarding plan? How is my ramp-up period? And also, what is my success look like? Or what is the successful criteria look like? Like 3 to 6 months or 6 months to 12 months. This is showing two things, right? Literally. One is you care, right? Like, okay, so I'm serious about this job. I'm thinking about my success, right? Second, again, you are showing a kind of problem-solving skill. You are showing your communication skill, right? Because this is showing how, if you hire me, how we're gonna work. I'm gonna articulate your request very clearly. We're gonna make roadmap and checkpoint very clearly, step by step, So even some candidate, technically, I feel they are not very strong, but if they can demonstrate their ability to learn, their communication skill, their problem-solving skill, their integrity, I would tend to bring those candidates rather than some technical superstars,
That just have no interest in success. Or, I mean, like if you're talking about a roadmap for success for yourself before, during the interview, I think it shows you're not just looking to come in, collect a paycheck till someone else, offers me more. Right?
I would say you are more like putting confidence there. Like if someone hire you, they're going to be success. Because as a manager, like I hire someone, I want this person to success. I will set this person to success because this person's success would contribute to my success, So what you try to convey in an interview is, I'm great. Even though something I'm missing now, I can quickly get there, So that is the only thing you try to convey in the interview, right? And also, just follow up my last question. I think the third thing you can always ask, it also depends on the role, right? If you're interviewing for a more senior role or like a more management role, you can always ask for the strategy and vision,
Okay.
Because a good leader, it depends on who you're interviewing their level. If you're interviewing someone in a high level, my personal opinion is like for like an entry-level manager, probably they're thinking something 6 months to 12 months. And then a bit higher would think like 1 to 3 years. And then a bit higher would be like 3 to 6 years. Interview is really a two-way selection. You don't want to go somewhere everyone seems clueless, Sometimes people say, oh, we don't know what we do. That's why we hired you to figure it out, like avoid.
Right.
This is such a red flag.
Yeah, get out of there.
Like this is such a red flag. And just by listening to their vision, you would understand if your senior leadership, if your leadership would make some basic sense, And also you can somehow have a certain idea if the team gonna have good content for them to work for a certain long time. That also contribute to your job security.
Right.
You don't want to just jump in somewhere 3 months later, your boss is looking for a job together with you, you know?
Right. Like they're getting rid of the whole department or something, right?
Yeah, anything could happen nowadays, right? So you really want to make sure like you join your team, they care about you. Because as I said, it's two-way, right? Like me as a manager, I try to hire someone who can success. But as a candidate, you also need to think about where I join can make me success, you know? If the setup is correct, you know? You talk with different people, make sure, okay, it's collaborative environment. Or some people like competitive environment. It really depends. But you want to figure out if it's a good team, have good content for you to work on, you know? Because sometimes I see so many smart people, but they fail really because their manager or their company does not provide enough good work for them, or the setup is just wrong. They set you to fail, you know? So those are some very fundamental things. Not only you try to show yourself during an interview, but also you need to, through the conversation, through the question, to collect if this is a good place for you to be, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, as far as like the AI jobs that you've hired for, you know, everyone says AI, they're just working on ChatGPT. What are your people specifically doing within these companies?
Yeah, I can share overall of different kind of industry insight, right?
Yeah.
For example, Lowe's is like retail. And retail, if you think about, there's something about retail. It's just, for example, it's always heavy on supply chain because we need to bring one spot to another, either to the store or to the consumer's home, right? So supply chain is always huge. And then from supply chain, you have planning, you have fulfillment, like network planning, different kind of forecasting, etc.
It's a lot of predictive modeling of,
exactly.
Okay, here's where the supply chain is breaking down or could break down. How do we avoid that? Okay, cool.
Right. And also it's really omni-channel marketing. Everything you see the commercial on TV, you see the social media and everything, right? So there's some specific use case, for example, computer vision or NLP or generative AI. But I do believe there are some fundamental use case across different business. Some business probably slightly different. For example, like telecommunication, for example, even for some website or app, or as long as it's a subscriber-based business, they are very heavy on so-called propensity model. It's actually binary classification, like yes or no, this customer gonna respond to my promotion, right? Or which promo should I send the customer 30% off or 15% off, right? So those kind of subscriber-based or heavily on marketing companies, they're gonna, or even fraud or risk-based, like bank, is huge on fraud and risk. Is this customer gonna commit fraud or not? Or is this a case or not, right? So this is all like answering yes or no or probability type of questions. So this is very heavy on like classification. And then there are some specific common asked questions like, oh, how do you handle imbalanced data set, yada, yada, yada. Those are very typical in this entire category. So if you want to join a company primarily doing this, you want to be very familiar, right? Some company, as you were mentioning, supply chain based, some probably more on optimization research, like operation research, optimization type of problem. Some is more on forecasting. Then this probably require slightly different skill set. Some companies, like they are very heavy on recommendation. Like you just can tell when you swipe, like they need to figure out what is the next thing we need to recommend to you, right?
Right.
And recommendation system, for example, is very special skill set. And computer vision, for example, if you walk in somewhere, you need to count how many people in the queue, how many people in the area, right? Or generative AI, like there's chatbot everywhere. Of course, it's not just chatbot. Now so many so-called AI agents, right? But my suggestion is you don't need to know everything. You don't need to chase after one shining stuff after another. But you need to have like a solid foundation of problem solving in data science. And you need to have something you're really good at. You know, you really don't need to. I see like many people just join the workforce, especially like younger or early career professionals in data science. First of all, they get too excited or too overwhelmed. They think, oh my God, there's so many shining stuff I need to learn. There's so many different kind of topics, right? And that immediately lead to the second thing, either they don't get focused enough, right? Or they don't get deep enough, it's kind of the same thing. By focus, I mean, yes, you do need to focus on a certain skill set. Like, okay, I see some people, they've been doing like NLP or recommendation for like 10 years, 20 years, the entire life. So from their PhD, even from their undergrad, right? This is actually great, right? You don't need to shift around. This year I'm doing Gen AI. Next year of course, it's somehow correlated, but you really don't need to shift every year. You can just keep digging into a certain area, stay focused, and to dig it deeper. But also, meanwhile, probably just keep an eye on what's going on the side. Like, personally, for Gen AI, I'm a big fan of Gen AI, but I don't believe it's everything. And I do believe it's destroying the younger career.
Because they're just chasing that.
I would say two things. One is, since my observation, because I've been hiring for many years, I would say recent 2 years, I do say the candidate, on one, it's very interesting. On one hand, everybody is complaining like, hey, I don't have a job. It's so hard to find a job. On the other hand, I hear from every hiring manager, it's so hard. It's getting harder and harder for them to find the right people. Like, so many people, I talk with them in the interview, they don't have a solid foundation at all. Many people don't know how to code because probably they just so rely on the coding directly from certain Gen AI tool, right? From Cloud, from Gemini, And also, many people just don't have the fundamental to understand the algorithm, to understand the mathematics, right? Because, okay, ChatGPT can give you 2 pages of formulas of mathematics, but you need to go understand it, right? I feel many candidates don't have that patience anymore, right? To really crack into things, to really debug code line by line, to figure out where the optimization gonna be. Like, after all, it's a language model. The result it returned to you could have many different versions. You have to go work on it, try yourself to figure out why some parameters is set in certain way, why some code is written in certain way, right? That actually take lots of hard work and experience to figure out what's going on, right? But I feel, especially especially like who I interviewed, like some people who recently want to join data science or AI or machine learning, some people recently graduated. This is very common. Like, people don't have a good understanding into the algorithm, into the math, into the detail, and people don't have a solid coding skill. This is, I feel, becoming very common, which is not a
So
good
you think they should get that engineering background, then transition to the data science AI?
Because honestly, how to say, if we talk deeper, like, okay, so if we say data scientists, or there are actually only 2 kind of job, I would say. One is applied scientist, one is research scientist. Of course, we could carry all different names, like we were saying about data scientist, about machine learning engineer, whatever, but it's really just 2 kinds. One is research scientist, like you are the one who is designing the algorithm, You're going to write line by line, code by code, modular by modular. You are designing the algorithms. Like, you're really writing the functions, writing the packages, right? Like, you are writing Llama 3 or you are writing the GPT-4 models, right? That is like a research scientist. Of course, arguably, there are many other research scientists too. But most of us, I would say, are like applied scientists. Like, you just call a function. You call a package, a Python package, right? You import a package, right? That's people say, like, during interview, people are going to ask you this much about transformer, and in real work, you just import transformer.
Right.
There's actually a joke. Yeah. So, but there are 2 types of job, like research scientists and applied scientists, right? So you need to know like which direction you want to go to. So my personal opinion is, like, research scientists normally require very strong technical background. Like, probably you need to have a PhD. I mean, not necessarily, but most
Do most of the people you hire have PhDs?
I would say it really depends on my vision of the roles. If it's more like towards, as I was saying, if it's more like research scientist, then probably I would tend to have someone with that field research experience, right? And for applied scientists, honestly, it really doesn't matter. Like, if they have because there are so many other skill sets are required, right? Because you're going to be engaged with business. How do you do proactive communication to align with the stakeholder, with leadership, with a team member, right? How do you present, So how do you tell a data story, how do you be agile, like to consistent deliver over time to keep everyone somehow happy. This is also very important skills, like in the applied scientist job, because you need to bring things into reality, into production. You need to show the dollar value, show the incremental revenue or saving cost, right? So that's why, like, back to the generative AI topic, I do think it's something probably nowadays everyone have to learn.
Yeah.
Somehow you just cannot say, hey, I know 0 things about Gen AI, right? But I would say come back to the fundamentals, because after all, to most people, they are really just applied scientists in generative AI. They are not writing the large language models themselves. That to be said, probably they just call API.
Right.
Of course, there are lots of engineering challenges like latency of the answers, etc. Do I use RAG or do I do fine tuning, etc. There are lots of engineering challenges and lots of technical skill set are needed. But after all, it's, in my opinion, most likely in many companies just calling an API. You're not gonna really learn much about it. And every few years, I say there are new shining object coming out, right? Okay, you can go chase one after another, but what would be your a safe place you can always go back? You know, as I was mentioning, like every company would have marketing, lots of company would have supply chain, you know, lots of company would have sales, lots of company would have operation. Like the fundamental so-called classical machine learning use case and application sitting in those areas, either generating revenue or saving costs, like impacting the business, in my opinion, is really something fundamental there. That's why I feel many data science team actually completely failed in many company, right? One reason is because those data scientist team forget, first, they are not academic, right? In a company, you need to prove your value.
Yeah.
Second, they are not impacting the core business, you know?
So when you say they're not academic, you mean that they're using that like PhD training and they're just saying, look at this cool insight. And you're like, okay, that doesn't help us, right?
Yeah, right. Because I mean, like, for example, after all, for most company, they build a data science team. I mean, of course, there's innovation lab or whatever. They don't really care of the if or not some technology will immediately turn to a dollar value. But for most companies, they hire a data science team not just for fun, not just for decoration, but to solve real problems, right? They're probably struggling of finding a use case, but they want to, right? So then, how to use data science, use AI to solve the problem, right? To have that perfect product market fit. It could be internal use case, right? But to identify a product market fit is really something hard, but something very important. I think every manager, even every individual contributor need to think about it, right? Like, how is your work impacting the business?
And should they be expressing that on the interviews with you, or
I would say
is there a way to do that?
this is very fundamental through the entire process. If you think about even through resume writing, right? You don't list 100 things and just hope like something could pop out, right? It's almost like a format. When you write the interview, you always try to say what method you use to solve what kind of problem and what will be the impact. That impact part could be model accuracy improvement, could be dollar value generation, could improve efficiency. Like, okay, it's an engineering feature, and then after you deployed it, and then the overall deployment time reduced 30%, right? Or okay, you're writing Spark, you literally write Spark, rewrite everything, and then the runtime reduced by 80%, you know, or the accuracy improved by 20% after you did hyperparameter tuning, or after you use a different modeling approach, or even just analytically, oh, you built a dashboard. It doesn't sound so fancy. However, this dashboard is literally helping like 50 business partners and reduce their analytical time by every week 40 hours or etc. Right? So that's like from writing a resume, you already showing you care about the impact. And also when you talk during an interview, right? You introduce your work. You always land on what is the problem, how did you tackle it. You can talk like what is the challenge and how did you tackle it, right? That can show your problem solving. But then always need to land on like what is the impact. Yeah.
Right.
It could be direct business impact, or it could be at least something. Like you helped your internal team efficiency, your tech team efficiency, You helped like your internal business partners, stakeholders save their time, helped their streamlines, modernize their business process, etc. It need to be something. Otherwise, like what you're doing in your company,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And where do you see this industry going in the next 5 to 10 years?
I would say, first of all, it has already drastically changed. Just do something random and then you get a high paid job in a tech company. It's not happening anymore. Like joining a 3 months boot camp and then you get a fancy job at FAN or whatever.
Right.
It's not anymore. It's even becoming very hard to join a traditional company like Lowe's. Honestly, it's becoming very hard. It's becoming very much more competitive.
Why is that? Is it saturation of candidates or?
That's one point, because you do see like in the recent 2 to 5 years, there are lots of new grads, right? I think most programs are 5 to 10 years old or even younger, and then lots of people are graduating. And you also see right now almost everyone can just do an online degree or go back to school, or no matter what they do, they can have something on site. And also everyone have ChatGPT, make people feel like they know everything,
Sure.
So I think by nature there are it just the industry is becoming more mature. So by nature, you have more people jump into it, so you have more supply. But the demand, in my opinion, is shifting. I won't say the demand is dying, but I would say the demand is definitely shifting. That's why we say there are lots of layoffs, and there are lots of reorgs or like shifting around budget, right? Like people before investing in like blockchain, for example, then those people probably now invest in generative AI. And then later on some other like quantum computing, like you see how the capital is chasing after different kind of topics, and then that's somehow shifting the budget in headcount, right? So I would say to recent few years, I don't expect the job market gets a lot better. Actually, I think it would get probably somehow worse. Like it would be harder for people to crack into tech to find something good, right? But this is just normal. Industry is coming to a more mature stage, right?
So what would you recommend someone thinking of that next 5 years in mind?
For new grads or for people already?
Like if you were, if what advice would you give yourself if you were, in college right now or something?
Oh, I would actually, how to say, like do exactly the same thing, but with less stress.
Okay. So what was that path?
Because you have a lifelong time to work, right? But I would say for a career path-wise, my first suggestion is always don't think that much. I feel people always try to find the optimal solution to start with. Oh, I have to get into Google, get into Meta. I have to work in machine learning or something. Sometimes you really just don't have that good luck opportunity to immediately onto something, right? But I would just say every situation you try to take the most out of it, right? Like you work right now, and where does this lead you to the next step? What you can learn from your current role. If you cannot, then what you can practice or what skill you can build on the side. And then if you cannot immediately get somewhere, it might take a bit detour, but sometimes it's fine, And you would actually gain and you become unique, I would say. For example, I worked in retail for 4 years now, so I can always say, hey, I have like retail experience, I have like consumer goods experience. That actually means a lot for some industries, right? And if you work for, just be really good at what you're doing, I would say. No matter what you're doing, be really good at it, right? If something doesn't happen immediately, that's probably not your fault.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have kind of pivoted industries. You still stayed in the same, you stayed in the data science, machine learning, AI space, but you've kind of jumped industries.
Yeah.
Why did you do that? Was it difficult? Is it just kind of once you have the fundamentals, it's pretty easy just to switch industries? I mean, what was that like?
Yeah, I can talk quickly on two perspectives, right? One is it's really not up to me. It's like every time when I look for a job, of course, I have some companies in mind, but in the end, some happen, some not, right? That's kind of back to where I started. We have to accept the randomness in the universe. Like if you learn statistics, if you learn data science, you have to understand that, right? We have outliers things happen in a certain case, okay, majority of people, how it is going to be. But there's also outliers, good or bad.
Mhm.
So you cannot always expect yourself be the good outlier. You need to understand most time things just happen mediocrely in the middle. Sometimes you have bad luck, in the underperformer of the outlier side,
Mhm.
right? Which is fine. You're not always going to get bad luck, right? Just take it and then try to pivot it, try our best to learn. Sometimes it's not your time, then just wait and learn and improve on the side. Sometimes it is your time, then just go grab it, like if there's a promotion or something,
Mhm.
right? So that is what I'm gonna say first. It's not really like there's 10,000 things for me to choose. I exactly chose this industry,
Mhm.
so it really
They
depends.
came to you.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
we can see that in some way.
Gotcha.
Second, I want to say like the skill set is transferable. Like
Mhm.
for example, like after all, in data science or machine learning or whatever, there are some common practice like regression, classification, clustering, right? Or there are many fundamental algorithms everyone use every day, like XGBoost, transformer, right? It just after all, people try everything, probably they found out, okay, XGBoost work the best if you're doing machine learning.
Yeah.
And deep learning, everyone's adding transformer here and there, right? The algorithms somehow become popular and then out of fashion, popular again, shifting around. But the fundamentals are always there. And you can easily shifting industry. But you need to be very much aware every industry is different, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, you were already in the industry when obviously ChatGPT, then everyone wants to get into AI and all this stuff. So, I mean, what did you see? Was it like kind of like a gold rush? The demand was, you said the demand is leveling off now. So, have salaries come down? What type of money could people expect to make now in general? You can give us a range so you're not giving anyone's salary out. But
I would say like for tech company, everything is on level.fyi. So you can really just go check that. It's very available online.
Mhm.
And for traditional company, I would say I really want to give everyone a range, but I have to say it really depends nowadays because different state is very different, different companies very different. But I would say one tip is it really from the comps a company provide you
Mhm.
can somehow give you an idea how much impact you're gonna produce. If they expecting you shifting that 1 billion revenue, they will not pay you penny.
Right.
If they pay you apparently very bad, that probably mean two things. One, they haven't figured out what they want. They just want to hire someone, try it out, if it fail whatsoever. Two is probably they haven't it's not impactful enough yet.
Mhm.
It's like a side business for them because you need to understand for what company data is their product, for what
Right.
company data is not their product.
That's the big tech companies, right?
Yeah, right. So you need to be very clear, like what does it? I mean, after all, comps is just a number, right?
Mm.
But you need to understand what does the number mean. Why some company willing or able to pay that much? Why some company is not? I think that is very simple to understand. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But did you see, during the, I guess a couple years ago when things were kind of crazy, when basically the supply was super low at that, you said the supply is higher now. Were you seeing like
yeah.
entry level people making insane money or what was it?
Okay. So that's actually a very interesting topic because I see both direction. I see on one hand, people getting paid more and more. Some people, on the other hand, get paid less and less.
Mm.
Like how the let me
Why
argue.
is that?
Let me argue. Yeah, I would say exactly back to where I was. Like for a company who already figured out the value of data science, like in the past few years, they had successful example. They know like how to use data science to impact their revenue. As I was saying, if you are making the company extra $300 million, how much they should pay you?
Right.
Right. Those kind of companies, they tend to increase their budget over time. They will consistently adjust their budget with the market. They try to stay competitive, even align with the company a lot somehow more reputable than them. That's why they actually some random, like a small, not very well-known company or more traditional business, sometimes they even pay really well.
Even as much as big tech or something? Or?
I would say it really depends on how you value the comps, because big tech has a lot of stocks.
Yeah.
Right. Where do you see the stock go? Where, especially like startup have equities. Traditional companies, they also sometimes pay you stock, sometimes not, but it's probably more stable. Also, if you want a job security or not. So it's really, you need to evaluate it. But I do see some non-tech company pays very competitive comps, right? Those companies, I see even the salary is getting higher and higher because they figured out the value. So they're willing to pay. And then you have those companies who, I won't call them failures or losers, probably because there are so many reasons a project could fail.
Sure.
Like not the right people, not the right business, not the right data, right? But those companies, somehow they tend to probably give you lowball offer, like to cut the budget, cut the headcount, or they don't even have good enough work or real work. For example, it's actually data analytic work. Like you just need to use Excel, just doing dashboard. Like there's really nothing on top of it, right? Which is makes sense because after all, data scientist, machine learning engineer, just a title, right? Like what you do, identify what you get paid. Like your impact, what you do is really identify that. For those kind of companies, they probably even tend to pay less and less, right? Because, okay, so after they hire you, they realize you're not going to create that much benefit, then why are they willing to pay you?
Yeah.
I also observe some companies, they even become so sad and they just get out of the entire data science initiative. They just feel like, okay, it is what it is. We don't want to invest in anymore. This is just, we have those people, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or, okay, their own business is not going well. So even they really want to pay, they cannot pay, right?
Yeah. So you think that would be cut in favor of the core business, right? If things start to go bad for them.
I do see it's happening already.
You see it happening.
I see from the tech world to non-tech world, every business is trying to allocate their budget more in their core business. In the good years when interest rate was low, when politics was stable, then people was more willing to take risks, which means, okay, I can invest in data science, invest in whatsoever AI or fancy technology. It doesn't turn to immediate revenue and it's increasing my operational costs. This is totally fine. But now when people think about we might already in the winter or we come into a very cold winter, so you have to pump all the blood to your heart, right? That is what we say from tech to non-tech. They try to cut some not very urgent, very important projects and more focus on the hiring, budget, everything into their core business model, right? This is somehow come back to, what I was saying about the core use case of data science, of machine learning versus some of the fancy object change over the years. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And, before we go, I'm going to give any last tips, but what about you see all these this.ai, like all these companies popping up, do you see it an industry where there's going to be a ton of companies, or is it like kind of maybe social media where there's only a few big ones and a lot of like Vine, is it going to be like that with AI, or is it going to be a lot of different?
Where there'll be one winner take it all?
Yeah. Maybe not one, but a few.
Yeah, a few.
So
I would say, I know I'm again going to say yes and no, because yes, in a certain ways, at least in some certain area, it will become a few giant companies dominating everything because it is expensive to train. It really needs lots of money and people to do something, right? So ultimately, it will be kind of winners take it all type of thing, because that's technology evolved all the way. Even we look at when internet came out, when smartphone came out, right? Many brands, we no longer heard about it, right? Although it was very popular. So for sure, it will end up with a few tech giants dominating everything. But I also say there is, for example, there is DeepSeek, right? So, or there is disruptive technology coming out all the time from small places, from small teams, And also, one very important trend I personally observe is, I think we are at a stage, company focus more on building a product than building building technology. Like even you think about ChatGPT, think about many of those large language models, it has a different persona. If you ask, like I ask my friends, like, hey, what is your favorite tool? Some is like, oh, I prefer cloud because it's more quirky. Some is like, oh, I prefer ChatGPT. Some just say, oh my God, Gemini is the best. It understands me better than my wife. So yeah. So as you can tell, because this is fundamental marketing, right? Because we have different segments in different customers, we have different personas of the users. So by nature, the market would need different kind of product, right? And then for sure, that means we will have, and also because of Gen AI, because the cost of AI is getting lower, so the cost of having a startup is also getting lower. So the cost of company adopting AI become lower and lower, cheaper and cheaper. So you're gonna say in one direction, more and more companies popping out, right? In the use case of AI, into customize different kind of product for different kind of customer in AI. This is definitely, I'm thinking become more and more. But on the other hand, in some more specialized area, like capital, energy, relationship, public policy, whatever, difficult, intense areas, it would become less and less in the end, somehow dominating by a few players until a disruptor coming up.
Yeah. Okay. So to take us home, let's go over your best tips from the beginning. You said be authentic,
be prepared.
Learn. I mean, obviously know a bit about the company. I mean, how much should they research? Just some general stuff? Or?
I would say it's really not about knowing the company. It's really about knowing the people. That's actually probably in the end, I can give this final great tip is really you need to go search for the recruiter. Like you need to understand some companies more hiring manager driven, then probably find on the LinkedIn which hiring manager is actually hiring. So that hiring manager gonna bring you a fast track. Some companies more like recruiter driven, like you first go through some general interviews and then you get team matching and then you get hired, right? So for those, you really need to connect with recruiter, right? Like identify a top 20 company, just send 100 message, 200 message, or to every recruiter you can find. Of course, it also depends on your level. You need to look at what kind of recruiter, right? And then share your resume, tell them like you are looking for a job or you're looking for a career shift or something, and then build that connection, start to talk. From there, many information come afterwards. Then you can ask, even first, you're going to get your interview. Second, before the interview, you can literally ask, hey, what kind of question could be asked? They probably tell you, of course, I cannot give you exact the same question, but you can ask them like what type of questions or what they will not ask, right? So that's kind of where you get the information. I mean, just by applying 10,000 jobs or by Google or whatever, ChatGPT, general information, I think this no longer work anymore.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So be authentic, be prepared.
And know the hiring manager or recruiter.
Yeah. Know as much information about who is making the decisions. And then you said technical depth, focus on that as well, correct?
Yeah. You don't need to know everything, but you need to know something.
Something well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which I would say this is actually deeply rooted in your daily life and work. Like if you are in school, then always ask one extra step, right? Like, okay, why I'm doing this? Just not just by doing homework or having class. Really keep asking why, keep digging into it. If you are doing work, like very often people say, hey, I use random forums. And then you ask, hey, what is that? How does it work? They don't know,
right?
But I feel for interview preparation, you probably don't have that much time, but at least for daily work, you need to explain your work in depth in the interview, right?
Yeah.
Then you really, from your daily work, that's showing how much you're willing to dig deeper in, right? So that would be actually enough. Like, do something, make sure you do it very well, every step, and then every little step.
Be ready to talk about
the next step. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Awesome. Well, Jack, thanks so much for making this happen on short notice. And I hope you guys got a lot out of this. If you're going to do an interview in data science, AI, machine learning, go back and review this episode because he just gave the exact playbook on how to get hired in these spaces. So, Jack, thanks again.
Thank you.
Yep. And we'll catch you guys next time.
Yep. Thank you.